All right, another great episode of the Ortho Show. This one's really important because you're going to learn something. We bring on Marc Gruner, who's a physiatrist, and this kid's got some gumption, man. He saw this idea about a program where you could do home physical therapy remotely, be able to care for patients, be able to give them better outcomes. He validated the process scientifically, which showed that it worked. He then goes Mr. Smith to Washington, literally goes to Washington, and over 3 years, believe it or not, develops 4 new CPT codes so that doctors can be paid for this very worthwhile event. I think it's something that's going to really change and revolutionize physical therapy for physical therapists, for doctors, and for patients in particular. It's a triple win, really important episode. You have to listen to the whole thing. Dr. Scott Sigman, #follow the fro.
From Medical Media, this is The Ortho Show.
Hello, world. Dr. Scott Sigman, your favorite opioid-sparing orthopedic surgeon, here for another episode of the Ortho Show podcast, where everyone knows we bring you the best of the best in the orthopedic space. I have to say, I'm very excited about today's episode. I think this is going to be a tremendous learning experience for all of our listeners about a new topic, something that I think is really going to revolutionize how we help take care of our patients in the home setting. We have Dr. Marc Gruner, who's become a close friend of mine, who's a physiatrist who specializes in sports medicine. He's in private practice at Ortho Bethesda, and he is the CMO and founder of Limber Health, which is a digital health solution for providers. Marc, what a pleasure it is to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Scott, for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So we always start off at the Ortho Show, sort of, born and bred. Where'd you come from? It looks like you and I sort of grew up in the same area. I'm a Baltimore guy, and it looks like you barely left D.C. most of your life. So tell us a little bit about growing up in D.C. and when did you decide medicine and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I decided medicine. Like many athletes, I was getting injured, played basketball in high school and college, and really became interested in medicine when I was a personal trainer after college, and thought it was an interesting field to really help people and change patients' lives. And I thought it was a good opportunity to get involved in trying to give back and help people. So that's how I originally got involved. Did my medical school and MBA down at Virginia Tech, and residency at Georgetown, and then sports fellowship at Mayo Clinic, and then practiced in the DC area. And so been the DC area where I've been able to really learn a lot about policy. Worked at CMMI for a period of time, the think tank for Medicare, and really that's where I've been living all my life.
Yeah, no, it's a common story, especially athletes that are involved in athletics early in life. More often than not, you get injuries, you get hurt, you go see the orthopedic surgeon, you go see whatever, the doctor, and you say, wow, that's sports medicine and I can do that for a living. That would be really cool. It looks like you were at Dickinson, then you moved over to University of Delaware for exercise physiology. And then, as you said, you talked about your pedigree, and I want to congratulate you. It looks like at the age of 30, you got on your first airplane and you left the DC area to go to the Mayo Clinic. So congratulations. That must have been a very exciting moment for you.
It was a good spot. It's a little bit colder. My wife is from Santa Barbara, California, so
yikes, that's smart for sure.
It was an awakening moment for her. -30 below in Rochester, Minnesota, but it was a great spot to train and learn from some of the best surgeons and physicians across the country.
And what do they say? The state bird of Minnesota is the mosquito. Is that correct?
The mosquito,
in the summertime, that's the state bird.
They're huge. I don't know if you've ever the size of the mosquitoes there. The size of the mosquitoes there they're enormous.
That's hysterical. I love that. All right. So, but the Mayo Clinic is important because I think this sort of leads you as we come up to Limber. We'll talk about that, but I thought it'd be interesting for our listeners, because you're really the first physiatrist that we've had on the show, to sort of give an understanding and explanation of what you do on a day-to-day basis when it comes to taking care of patients. And so, as a physiatrist, physical medicine and rehab doctor, you're believing in non-surgical techniques to help patients that have pain and discomfort, especially in the sports medicine world, which is what you did your fellowship in. So describe for us some of the modalities that are available for you on a daily basis that you learned while at the Mayo Clinic that you use routinely now.
Yeah. So first, I would say is how to maximize conservative treatment and think about the different options to help a patient improve, reduce their pain or improve their functional outcomes, and be able to track that. That was a huge interest of mine. So that would be thinking about exercise programs that might be appropriate for them. And then thinking about different ways to manage stress fractures or non-surgical types of injuries like shockwave therapy, for example.
So did you hang out with our friend Joaquin Sanchez Sotelo at all, the chief of shoulder surgery out there? Love that man. He
had the best
sweet
shoulder cases. I mean, the
I'm
things
sure
we were doing, he was like taking someone's ankle and putting it in their shoulder, and I was like, what's going on there?
And he's so kind and sweet, and he talks in that wonderful accent of his, and you just, yes, we're going to take your ankle, we're going to put it into your shoulder. And patient's like, thank you so much, Dr. Sotelo. That's wonderful. Well, no, I love it. But no,
he's a really, really nice person. Like
he
just
is
a very really good doctor.
Yeah, for such a worldwide leader, just a remarkably down-to-earth man. So I think it's interesting, again, for the listeners, the ultrasound is really important. It's a really unique tool, lost on me in my generation. Donnie Buford's a dear friend of mine who leads the way when it comes to ultrasound teaching. But again, it's a great diagnostic tool, right? You can identify structures, see if there's something wrong, but not just diagnostic, right? It's also therapeutic. So you can identify when you're putting something into the body to try and help to get people better. Let's walk through the orthobiologic thing a little bit, because I do think that's important. A lot of people are really fascinated by that. There's a lot of these crazy new QC kinetics that's opening up and charging people all kinds of crazy money, for what's going on. But I think there's some great indications and utilization for these. Let's talk about one in particular. Let's talk about lipogems. We're going to give Molly a shout out, because we do love our shout outs of the Ortho Show. But tell us what lipogems is, why you like it, and how you're using it in practice.
Yeah, for lipogems, I originally actually was introduced to lipogems through my uncle. He's a physicist at Cornell, and he told me about it. And they were using stem cells, specifically adipose treatment, on horses, and they were getting better. And he actually got lipogems by a physician in New Jersey. And he passed away. His name is Jerry Malanga, and had it done for his knee and his shoulder. And 5 years later, he was significantly improved, hasn't had any problems with his knee or shoulders, doing everything. And so my crazy physicist, he really looks like a mad scientist.
More than me? More than you. Einstein in the back. There he is. He's right there, dude.
And he's like, you got to look into the research of this. So when I was actually at Mayo, I became interested in research. We actually just brought on lipogems, and we're starting to offer that. We offered many different types of orthobiologic and FDA phase 1 different treatments. And so I became more interested in it. We were offering PRP, bone marrow, and adipose, and I felt like this was an easier treatment than bone marrow. And I thought that there was some good efficacy that could be applied in different clinical situations. So I actually, when I got into clinical practice, I participated in some studies actually with Cornell, and have been offering it for select patients. My biggest thing is I try to be as evidence-based and clinically appropriate as possible. In the Bethesda area, half my patients are doctors or lawyers, so that was a big part of what I really focused on, was explaining to them. I will give them studies, and so really offer it for knee arthritis. And it's not always the first treatment. I'll usually offer it if they don't get better with the PRP injection and they're not grade 4 severe arthritis. or I'll offer it for small, low-grade partial articular-sided rotator cuff tears, where I think it might be clinically appropriate, and they're not interested in a surgical option, and they're looking for something else.
So you basically, you take a device and you remove fat from the patient, their own fat cells, and
That's
then
correct.
it's minimally manipulated, and then done something to, and then you take what are those growth factors inside of those, the stroma or the tissue around the fat cells, which in theory creates a healing environment to reduce pain and inflammation.
That's a perfectly said. I think the one thing that's really important to everyone, it hasn't been shown to regrow cartilage. The growth factors have been helpful for improving pain and function. That's what we've seen in the clinical studies. And there's a belief that that has a potential for healing, helping healing in tendons, and then reducing pain for a longer period of time than a traditional steroid injection for knee arthritis.
And it sounds to me like they're in a clinical trial right now to try and get the indication for knee osteoarthritis. So they're pushing to be able to make that sort of an on-label indication, which would be, I think, quite unique in that space.
Very unique and doing it the most clinically appropriate way.
Yeah, the arduous FDA PMA approval process at about $20 million or whatever it takes to get through a study. But if it gets through, and it'll be worthwhile, and then it will certainly provide the evidence that you had just talked about as you're trying to talk to your patients about providing options. All right, so, again, let's now talk about this really cool thing that you have, which is how you and I got introduced, and we've spent some time in a couple meetings together at this point, done a pretty deep dive on Limber, and I'll be very transparent to say that I've been using your product in clinical practice. I was the beta test doc for our large PE platform, Spire Orthopedics, and so I'm happy to say that it went well. And it sounds
Thank you so much. We appreciate you're an early adopter.
You're very welcome, and it sounds like the Spire Orthopedic platform may be utilizing Limber across the board, so that'd be exciting. All right, so it's interesting. So this is what I got to figure out from you. All right, like the chicken or the egg. Okay, so you recognize that there's this need to be able to help patients at home, right? The laborious process of taking care of patients and coming to the office, they're paying copays, and then they got to get scripts to go somewhere, and they go to physical therapy, and they don't go. You saw that there was a vacuum and a potential treatment mode or process that could happen. You developed Limber, which is this home exercise program software that it works with patient compliance and scheduling and tracking and reminders and all these great things, so that we're providing super great care for our patients. But then somehow, some way in your busy life, you decide to go be Mr. Smith and go to Washington and try and change the world. And you go in front of CMS and try and develop these new codes so that actually physicians can be paid for this new service, which really looks pretty cool. So what came first? Was Limber there first? Was it parallel pathways? Were you going to DC to change the world? I'd love to hear the story.
Yeah. So what came first was Limber. We did a clinical study at Mayo Clinic, and really was thinking about more holistic care and how patients were complying with their therapy at home. But we showed good efficacy. We actually published that study and showed that patients did 3 times better with Limber than the standard of care. What was the problem is you need to have a good reimbursement model. And so I went to the AMA CPT panel and said, hey, I would like to bill for Limber. There's these new codes called remote physiological monitoring. And they said, you can't bill for those. Those are non-physiological pieces of data, which I wanted to track pain and function and tracking kinematic motion for how patients were moving with their range of motion. And
all right, hold on for a second, because you're losing Judy, and Judy and Elisa are going to be good friends. That's your mother. We'll talk about the mother story later on, but let's go back, because I want to make sure everybody understands. So just give the listeners the specific feedback of what Limber is. What does it do? How does it help a patient at home?
Yeah, so Limber is a digital home exercise therapy app that includes exercises that are prescribed through a portal or a protocol. And then the patient gets an app on their phone that includes video form home exercise programs that can be for any orthopedic condition. We have over 5,000 exercises and 120 programs now. They get reminders, they get notifications. We track their pain and function scores. We track their movement. All of this is done through a patient-facing app, which is pretty impressive nowadays. And then all that data, all that information goes back to the portal where their doctor or physical therapist or occupational therapist can know how they're doing. And all of this is being supplemented also by care navigators. These are licensed professionals that are trained in cognitive behavioral therapy and motivational interviewing, and they're checking in with the patient, making sure that, like I was a personal trainer, they're inspiring the patient to stick to their exercise program. And so that's a little bit about what Limber is.
I love it. All right. So for example, for me, so I have a patient comes in, you need a knee replacement, Miss Jones, and I'm going to sign you up for Limber for something we call prehab. We can't do your knee replacement for another 3 to 4 months, but I'd love for you to get involved now so we can build up your strength and your stamina so that you're going to be ready to rock and roll when it comes time for surgery. And we then sign the patient up to get the app on their phone. And then rather than getting in a car and relying on your son or somebody to take you to PT if you can't get there, you can do these exercises from home. Your smartphone monitors all of these things. You got cool coaches that are checking in with you, motivating you, keeping you going, and you're collecting this data so that we can actually show that it works, right? So that's Limber in a nutshell.
That's correct. Absolutely.
All right. Love it. So awesome for the patients. We figured that out. So Limber comes first. And then you talked about the AMA CPT. What that means to everybody is the American Medical Association. In order to get paid for something as a doctor, you got to have a procedural code. It's a thing that comes up so you can submit it in so that Medicare or your insurance company will pay for you. So they had these codes that you kind of thought might work, but it turns out they said, nope, go back to the drawing board. And as a classic entrepreneur, you don't just give up, right? You say, okay, I love this idea. What else can we do? So now tell our listeners what you did in order to make it so that doctors can be reimbursed for this valuable new treatment option.
Yeah. So the first thing I did was at Mayo, there was a doctor who was on the CPT panel. I told him I wanted to create a new code. And if anyone knows anything about me, I'm like the most persistent person out there. And I'll do everything that I can to try to be successful. And so he told me there's no way you're going to get a code.
Yeah, go home. What are you talking about? Nobody gets a new CPT
code. It takes 20 years.
Go home, kid.
And so I was like, well, that's I'm going to at least try. So I with the help of so many people that I became friends with and colleagues, was able to put in an application for a code for remote therapeutic monitoring. And that was taken in by the AMA Digital Health Payment Committee. And luckily we had so many societies, so Orthos, AOS, APTA, the AMA was supportive. And we had all the societies agree that this code would be A, helpful, and B, have the ability to save downstream healthcare costs. And so that's how those codes were actually created. And then the ROC, which is the one who values the codes, actually came up with a valuation for it. And that happened, which was really exciting. And all these are very hard milestones to happen. And then the hardest thing is to get CMS to approve it. And so we actually worked with CMS and met with CMS and talked about how improving therapy adherence and the lack of access to therapy were some large challenges. And if we could improve that adherence, there's an ability to decrease downstream healthcare costs and improve patient outcomes. And they decided to pay for it.
All right. So it's like, yeah, no big deal. I had to go through 3 separate committees, whatever, 3 years? I mean, how long did it take you to get the actual codes?
It took 3 years. It was a long process, and there were some sad days and there were some happy days. And there was definitely a lot of uncertainty if it would be accepted.
It's interesting. We've had so many entrepreneurs on the show, and anybody that's tried to start a business, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards. There is no playbook on how it's going to come out. Like you said, good days and bad days. But but the true entrepreneurs persevere and they keep moving forwards and they keep looking and striving for solutions. So, fantastic job, for you and the people that you worked with. I know this wasn't all yourself. It was a large group that sort of came together. But I think this is a huge.
Completely agree. I mean, if I've learned anything, this is a team sport. It requires lots of people. You have to get a lot of people to believe in you, and you have to be very persistent. And to any of the listeners on the show, you just never give up. You really got to always put your best foot forward, be proactive, and just keep a smile on your face while you're trying to get some stuff like this to be accomplished.
This is a truly huge win for both physicians and patients, right? So physicians, right? We can't work any harder.
And physical therapists.
And physical therapists too. I apologize. Yes, the physical therapists are a huge part of this as well, because they're able to monitor the process as well as extenders. But so, as healthcare providers, it's impossible for us to work any harder. It's time that we have to be able to work smarter, right? We can't press any more buttons. Every day, somebody's ratcheting us down on our reimbursement. So this is the first time in my 25 years of clinical practice that I can recall that new CPT codes came out that opens up an entire new, source of revenue for physician practices, but more importantly, provides the skill, the guidance for healthy lives to keep our patients moving in a way that they can comply in the safety of their home without having to run around and do crazy stuff. So, it's really been something that I've been very excited about and really thrilled to be a part of. So again, congratulations to you on that hard work.
Thank you so much, Scott. It means so much coming from you. So thanks a lot.
No, you're very, very welcome. And so, I want to talk a little bit more about this. And I still think that it's not really widely known yet that this exists, right? I mean, you're starting to get into large groups. Who are you working with now through Limber? Large hospital systems, private practices. Who are you partnering with?
Yeah, large PT practices, large orthopedic groups, and several hospital systems have been the ones that we've actually started with, and I think that's been our target market so far.
And the acceptance rate's been, once people drink the Kool-Aid and read through the tea leaves, they see it. People have been excited about the concept and the process.
Yeah, so there's definitely people that have been burned from other situations in the past. So it's a crawl, walk, run type of scenario. But Medicare covered the codes back on January 1st of 2022. Now we have many commercial payers covering the codes. Every single month, there's new commercial payers covering the codes, and that's definitely a process. But it's pretty exciting because there's more awareness coming down about remote therapeutic monitoring, and you have more providers and more solutions coming to the marketplace today.
I mean, I really think that it falls beautifully into the value-based, care equation, right? Because at the end of the day, if we can keep our patients moving, and perhaps they don't need as much surgery, they don't have as many secondary medical problems and conditions that they have as well, right? And what's the rate for the average person that completes a physical therapy program from a prescription from a doctor for regular physical therapy?
Yeah, I think this is a glide path to really innovative alternative payment models that I've spent my whole life working on. But so when I was at CMI is actually when I started working on Limber and thinking about these more holistic value-based care models. And when I was looking at the data, when a doctor gives a script and says you should do therapy, 12% of patients go to therapy.
12%.
12%, and then 30% complete it, and then they come back to us. And you ask them, did you do your therapy? And they say, I didn't do it. I asked why they didn't do their therapy. They say it was hard to get there. There's time constraints. The therapy was boring. There's costs involved. And I wanted to figure out ways to, how can we help patients be more successful over the therapy program? So we have good data on, is it the next step of their care surgery? Have they truly failed conservative treatment options that we should think about other options at this point? And, what are the things that we can do that help improve them on the early side that, that we get the right patients that need the right surgery at the right time. And so that's some of the data that I saw.
Yeah, and I think that your comment is really good for the physical therapists that are out there as well, right? I mean, physical therapists would be a lot happier if every patient went and completed all of their physical therapy. So physical therapists can now take part in the remote therapeutic monitoring as well. So another way, come to see me once a week, but let's see you remotely and make sure that you're doing well. I can also say that, I want to talk about this as far as the dashboard and the monitoring and the care. What you guys provide as far as the work behind the scenes, as far as the personal trainers or the care coordinators, but then there's nurses that are also involved that are monitoring the process. There's documentation of all of the things that are required that is necessary for you to bill Medicare, right? Last thing anybody wants is Medicare fraud, coming after them. So documenting all of this, but Limber does that for you. You have a dashboard, you can monitor, you can watch, but as a clinician, I'm not involved clicking buttons and calling people and looking on the phone. So it really extends my ability to care for patients without creating much more onerous work for me on a day-to-day basis, which to me is one of the huge advantages of the program.
Yeah, I completely agree. When you think of the value prop, one is helping a physician without doing an excessive amount of work, be able to be involved in the holistic episode of care, not just in that clinical visit. You might see them for 5 or 30 minutes or whatever that visit is, but throughout their entire episode. And what is the team that doctor needs or that therapist needs to be involved to make sure that they're knowing about what's happening at home and making sure that data is coming back to the clinic so the doctor or therapist can make a clinical decision about the next step in their care. And so this portal we have over 35 different flags. We track pain and function scores pretty accurately and have a high compliance rate. We're doing really innovative things to think of different ways to improve compliance for home exercise therapy.
And I want to also be clear, this doesn't preclude the patients from going to formal physical therapy as well. You can do that. You do both. You go to formal physical therapy and you can have remote therapeutic monitoring. So really the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I think this is a win-win-win for everyone, and it's very rare that happens. And I'm really excited because I truly believe in physical therapy. I believe in-person therapy is critical, and this is not a tool to cannibalize therapy. I think the goal is to how can we improve therapy adherence for everyone. Yeah,
no, I think you're spot on. One of the other things that I can talk, personally about my experience is that the patients seem to like it. It's not a hard sell. You got a smartphone, and they all the grandmas got smartphones. They got to be able to talk to their grandkids and see all the pictures and everything else. So they're pretty adept at using it. And every once in a while you get a patient says no. And so obviously they're not a candidate. But for the most part, it's really been well accepted by the patients.
Patients love it. They love the coach keeping them honest, making sure that they're sticking to their exercises. Once again, all of our coaches are trained in motivational interviewing. So they talk about goals. They talk about what they want to accomplish. The codes went live with Medicare, so sometimes older patients can be lonely. So having a friend to talk to coach them up with their exercises when they're feeling down and they don't feel like doing their exercise that day, this is a good way for them to stick to their home exercise program.
No, it's really, really well done. One of the things that I've been super happy to be able to provide for my patients. I want to send out some love to your mother and apologize to her when we called her from Vegas that night. Too late, but we were all excited about what was going on. So, Mom, we apologize. We're not going to call you after 10 o'clock ever again when we're getting excited about Limber.
I had to call my mother. She was so excited to speak to the Fro. It was her dream. She just happened to be sleeping because we were on the West Coast.
There you go. Well, we'll have to hook her up with Judy as well, and we're going to get ourselves a whole big little orthopedic Nachas family event for everybody to have fun. Listen, Marc, this was fantastic. Really, I thought that this would be a very important episode for our listeners to understand when something new comes around that is truly not incremental innovation, but really a major change. I think it's great to be able to share. You've made a huge difference, early in life, compelling, going through that rigorous process of getting those codes. And God bless you as an orthopreneur. I know the pain of that every day, and with all the things that we're doing here. But I really want to thank you for your time, commend you for your amazing efforts behind the scenes, and really hope that Limber takes off.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on the show. It's so awesome. I listen to the show all the time, and I'll be at Doc SF speaking about value-based care models and RTM. So really appreciate you talking with me today, Scott.
Yeah, congratulations, Mark. You are now officially an Ortho Show alumnus. We're thrilled to have you as part of the team. This is Dr. Scott Sigman, #FollowTheFro, host of the Ortho Show. Till next time.